Hello and welcome to the I Am Woman project, where every week we have deep, thought-provoking and interesting conversations with thought leaders, change instigators, rule breakers and creative minds who think differently, sparking creativity and inspiration. Our special guests on our show cover a variety of topics just for you, and they share their personal stories to inspire, motivate and empower you, our listener. The I Am Woman podcast is produced for your enjoyment, and show notes are found at www.catherineplano.com. Come back often and feel free to add the podcast to your favorite RSS feed or iTunes. All links are in the show notes. Now let's get into the show. I have a super awesome announcement. What would you say if I could give you a chance to be mentored by the world's leading international thought leaders, authors, speakers, and change makers? It's time for you to create space for miracles with the launch of the Radical Shift Summit for anyone wanting to experience change in their lives. Commencing on the 9th of October, over an 8-day period, these global gurus will help you understand how to achieve lasting positive transformation and make a quantum leap in life and in business. The summit offers teachings and recent discoveries from the world of neuroscience, cognitive psychology, medicine, philosophy, and much more. So don't miss out. This summit is an information-packed, intensive course that will help you to understand the complex connection between your mindset and behavior. Make no mistake, this is not just a talk fest. Workshops and presentations are designed with practical everyday life tips that you can easily apply at home, work, and in life. And all you have to do is go to www.radicalshiftssummit.com. So it's radicalshiftssummit.com and grab your free pass now. Today we have Carmel Bell, the Metatronic energy healer. In her book, When All Else Fails, A Journey into the Heart with Medical Intuition and Metatronic Energy, she explains, at 3:09 a.m. on Sunday the 15th of February 2009, Carmel Bell woke up to realize she was dead. She had suffered a cardiac arrest and was clinically dead for 47 minutes before being resuscitated by a team of 7 paramedics. While she was out of her body, she hovered like a ghost, shuttling back and forth between heaven and her bedroom to check what was happening with her body. In a coma for 4 days and in intensive care for 6 weeks, Carmel called in Metatronic energy to heal her damaged brain and has now made a full recovery, one that has been hailed a medical miracle. When All Else Fails is the extraordinary story of how Carmel first discovered and was gifted energy by the Archangel Metatron during a near-death experience by the age of 4. With great compassion, integrity and humour, she shares the story of how she has worked to heal herself and others using this energetic frequency for the last 25 years. Not many people can claim to have visited the borders of death and live to tell the tale in fascinating detail. Enjoy this interview with this remarkable woman, Carmel Bell. So today we have a very special guest for you, Carmel Bell. Welcome to I Am Woman Project.
Thank you, Catherine. I'm so pleased to be here talking.
So we, as we were having a bit of a conversation about energy before and exactly what you do and all of that stuff, we didn't know whether we were able to actually record the show because Carmel has this vibrant energy and sometimes it interferes with technology. So we got her on the show. But for our listeners, let's unpack Carmel. Tell us a little bit about your story.
Which part of the story would you like to know about? The beginning, like from years ago or the most recent?
Which story would you like to share with us?
Well, I'll brush through the very long ago one. I first discovered my abilities to do what I do when I was about 4 years of age, after I managed to set myself on fire in the middle of the night and burned to death. And I had a really bizarre experience while I was dead. And after I came back, after I was resuscitated and then out of the hospital and so forth, I found that when I looked at people, I could hear their body like talking to me. It's a weird way to describe it. It was just like this knowledge would be inside my head that there was something wrong with them. And I remember the first time I did that, my godfather was a doctor, and he used to love to visit me. So he came down to where we were living in the country, and he came in the front door and he scooped me up and clutched me to his chest, and I put my hand over his heart and I said, "Uncle Jerry, what's wrong with your heart?" And he said, "Oh, nothing, darling." Well, 2 weeks later, he'd had a massive coronary arrest and died. And it kind of went from there, where I just started paying more attention to what I was seeing and what I was hearing on those waves. I remember I'd lie in bed at night and I'd see these faces appear, and they would start to talk to me. And for a long time I was very scared about this, because nobody else I knew was doing anything like this. And I was a Catholic, so it wasn't really a great look. That's where it started.
So this is this obviously just happens? You're sitting there with somebody and you just see it. It just comes to you, or is it something that you invoke for you to be able to see and tap into that energy? I mean, how does it work for you? Is it on all the time?
Now, no, it doesn't stay on all the time. It used to when I was very young, and that did literally give me a lot of trouble in my life, because I knew when people were lying, and I struggled. If they were telling a lie, I found that intolerable, or if they were doing something that they didn't want other people to know about, and I could see it, and I wouldn't know that it was hidden, so I would talk about it. And I was curious, like every 14, 15, 16-year-old is. I wanted to know, and we push boundaries and we explore and all that sort of stuff. But it wasn't until I was in my late 20s and I was running a completely unrelated business to this, and I was working as a clairvoyant on the side, that I told a woman who was having a baby. She was a client. I used to design clothing. I was a fashion designer. And this woman came along, and I was doing some work on a new dress for her. And I suddenly knew that she was pregnant, but that there was something else in her uterus. And I couldn't see what it was, because I hadn't had that experience. And I find that to do the work that I do, you actually need a lot of experience. You can't rely on spirit to deliver the information. You actually need to unpack all this information into yourself that spirit can access, if that makes sense. So all I could do was describe to her the best I could that it looked like there was something in her uterus overlapping her baby, and she was really frightened and left in a rush. And then she came back about a few weeks later, and she came back specifically to thank me, because she went straight from me to her obstetrician quite distressed, and they did an ultrasound and discovered that she had this tumour that grows only in women when they're pregnant, and it grows with the baby and eventually consumes the baby. So she would have given birth to a cannibalized dead baby and a big tumor.
Oh,
but
wow.
what they managed to do, having been warned, because normally they don't discover this. This was, probably about 1985. They opened her up and removed the baby, excised the tumor, put the baby back in, stitched her up. And so it was after all that was done and she had healed sufficiently that she came back to see me. And she eventually gave birth to a healthy baby girl.
Oh, wow.
And she started referring people on to me, and I didn't think too much of that. I just kept on going. And then when I was in my mid-30s, I suppose, I decided that every client I got was something to do with health, and I needed to focus more on that. So I started my own clinic and had other practitioners working there. And one day this lady came along, booked in for a session, and we sat down and started to talk, and I started giving her my diagnosis of her energy system. And then she said, I want to ask you about my partner, and gave me his name. And I said, look, I don't normally look. And she said, I really need some help. There's something wrong with him. Can you tell me what's wrong? And I focused on him, and immediately I could see that one of his kidneys was failing. And I told her that. And she thanked me, and off she went. And the issue was addressed, and she started, it turned out that this woman was a doctor. And she didn't want me to know that she was the doctor. She wanted to come along and potentially, I suppose, she wanted to tell if I was a fake or if I was trapping people with nonsense. But my diagnosis and description of her boyfriend and his body and what was going on was so accurate that she was blown away and started to refer all her clients to me. And from that, more doctors heard about me, and more doctors started referring clients to me and coming to see me themselves, even, not telling me that they were doctors, as they tend to do, which didn't particularly bother me. And then I was invited to be a associate member of the Integrative Medical Association of Australia, and went from there.
Wow. So when you opened up your clinic was obviously, you were a medium or a psychic, but really working with others and healing whatever you could see.
I called myself an aura diagnostician because that was the best description I could give, is that I was no longer a clairvoyant. I'd had people that I'd trained, and they did the sort of the general as my husband cheating on me nonsense. My response always is, if you're asking the question, it doesn't matter if he is or isn't. You think he is, so, be concerned there. I focused on the health issues. So people would come in who had health issues, and I would lend myself completely to that. And then I remember probably, a year or so after that, my husband came home with a book, and he said, look what I just found while I was out. And it was actually Carolyn Miss's first book, where she described herself as a medical intuitive. And I was, quite blown away. I read her book, and I could see that we did similar work, but actually quite different. She's a lot more spiritually focused, whereas I'm more physically focused. And people naturally started to call me medical intuitive from then. So I got lumbered with the title.
Oh, I love it. And Carmel, do you think that sometimes if you don't have medical kind of background, do you think that sometimes interpretation, because I know that sometimes when you receive information from greater source, or if you channel information, it really depends on how we interpret the information. Do you feel that sometimes the interpretation is not quite clear enough, or you're always bang on with what it is?
No, I I don't think it's not quite clear enough because I have a lot of medical training now.
Okay.
I have gone to great lengths to study anatomy and physiology and medicine and pharmacology, and I can hold my own with most medical specialists. But my father is a compounding pharmacist as well as a pharmacist and a psychotherapist. And my mother is a psychologist. And my older brother is a neuropsychologist. 2 or 3 of my best friends are medical doctors and so forth. So and my husband is an ambulance officer and an ambulance was an ambulance trainer as well. He's left the profession entirely now. So I was actually surrounded by medical people.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. It runs in the family.
Yeah. And I could call on if I get a case that I'm not sure of, I will make notes, make my assessment, pass the information on, and then I will go and research and, double check it with people.
Wow. So how many lives have you saved? Because when you think about it, it's almost like you're tapping into the energy before it forms or, develops into something worse.
Yep. I wouldn't know how to estimate thousands, I would say. Just the people that write to me or come back to see me. A lot of people say. I know I get a lot of letters of gratitude, but I have lost some too. And not because I misdiagnosed or anything, but there was. I died 8 years ago, just over 8 years ago. And that took me offline for about 1.5 years. And in that gap, probably 2 or 3 of my favourite clients actually had the audacity to die on me. And which was really, I say that with tongue in cheek, but it was very, very distressing that I couldn't keep them going.
So, Carmel, what do you mean by you died 1.5 years ago?
Well, at around 3:42 in the morning, I woke up dead and I found myself standing in my bedroom. Really, when I think about it, it's quite humorous. I found myself standing in my bedroom, sort of going, I wonder why I'm standing up. That's odd. And, I'm looking around the room, I go, it's dark. That's really bizarre. What am I doing? Last thing I could remember, I was asleep. And then I looked down at my bed and I saw my husband there and I saw him cuddling me. And I was shocked. In fact, it still shocks me, really. He was cuddling me. So I spent about the next 12 minutes trying to get his attention, trying to push on his body. And although I could touch him, I couldn't move him, trying to get back into my body. And every time I tried, I would just be thrown back out. And probably about, as I said, 15 minutes later, because it was eventually he woke up and thought to himself that he needed to go to the toilet and assumed that is what woke him up. So he got up and he walked to the toilet without turning on the light and did his stuff. Men, they always take ages in the middle of the night. And while I'm sort of champing at the bit, he came back and he hopped into bed and I sat down on the end of the bed thinking, that's it, I'm dead. He's never going to notice. And for some reason, he said he turned on the light because he thought I was breathing funny. And it turns out that I was dead and I was really blue and I was what they do, I was chain stoking, where my body was in an automatic function place where the chest is going up and down but no oxygen is coming in or out. And my heart had stopped. So he commenced CPR and then called the ambulance service, and from the time that they arrived at my bedside, however long that took, it was 42 minutes before they resuscitated me from that point on. I think that was 5 shocks and 12 shots of adrenaline and constant CPR.
Wow, Carmel, I don't know what to say. I'm sitting here going, so that's twice that's happened to you where you've died and come back to life.
Yeah, well, yeah, I've had two minor, what I call minor incidences in between where I have died. Once when I was giving birth to my second son, I hemorrhaged and they had to save my life. I think it took in the end about 5 litres of blood and some CPR. And another time on the operating table when I was having minor surgery, I was meant to be out for, like 10 minutes. And, I think it was about 3 hours later that I was back with incredibly sore ribs and everything. And my doctor came in and told me that I had a little bit of trouble with my heart. So,
well, Carmel, I'm curious, how does it feel like when you pass over?
There is no pain. The biggest difference, and I've thought about this for so long, particularly since this last episode, every bit of pain that you think you will feel is gone. Like if you are meant to die and you have an accident, say in a car crash and you're going to die, your energy will actually be taken out of your body before your body is dead. So there is no pain in that regard. I would imagine that if somebody was kidnapped and tortured and whatever, those people are deliberately kept alive, so that would be different for them, sadly. But it's cold. And that is one of the biggest differences, is that on Earth with fellow humans, when we touch each other, you can feel, even if they've got, they've been out in the snow or whatever, you can feel a warmth and energy. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And when you're dead, you can't feel that, but you can feel other spirits, but it's not solid. So I know when I was in heaven last, I hugged quite a few of the people that I met up there and embraced them as hard as I could, but at no point did I feel like I was actually hugging a body. I couldn't feel the embrace. I needed to embrace more than I felt it.
Because I've spoken to quite a few people that have actually either experienced near death or experienced death, and it's interesting I find it fascinating because obviously I haven't experienced it, but it's more so that sense of peace, lightness, the energy. It's really it's really hard to put it into words.
Can I backtrack you there?
Yeah.
There isn't. A lot of people have that, and a lot of people have committed suicide on that basis, that when they die, all their trouble will be over. Well, as a multiple experiencer, and validated, like I'm amongst one of the longest dead people who has recovered, validated, like medically witnessed, not just on their own statements. Your troubles aren't over, Catherine. When you get to heaven, they don't end. You do not get there and go, whoa, I'm good now. I don't have that, like that argument with my sister to worry about. It's all done. Chances are you will worry about that sort of thing more because you didn't address it. Like one of the worst things people can do in their life is hold a grudge, is not forgive and let go. Sometimes you can't forgive if somebody has really critically hurt you and that level is dependent on you. You don't have to let them back into your life, but you do need to consider forgiving at the very least yourself for participating in that. And that may sound crazy to people too. I know I have been down that path at times, but you don't just get to heaven and have everything wiped clean. If you haven't dealt with it here, you still have to deal with it there. And if things are happening, repeating, there's a lesson that you are failing to learn.
And hence, I guess that's why they say we come back to relive that life, maybe in a different body, in a different vehicle, to learn that lesson.
Again and again. And I do know of souls that have recycled through learning the same lesson over and over again. And I'm related to a couple, I would say.
Yeah.
And it is really, really hard. And then there are other people who were so good that they get the hardest lessons, and you wonder to yourself, how can this person who is so good be given such a hard lesson? And what I mean by that, for instance, one of my sisters, I come from a large Catholic family of people that I love dearly. They're all fantastic people, but one of my sisters had children. Every time I had a baby, she had a baby about a year after I did. And her first son died when my eldest son was 3.5. Her son was 2.5. And then we both had a second son. My son lived, and her son lived 3 hours and then died. Then I had a third son who was born prematurely, and her third son was born even more prematurely and didn't even get out alive. He was born dead. And then I had a fourth child, my daughter. And when I had my daughter, she announced, about 6 weeks after my daughter was born, she announced to me that she had adopted a daughter, an Australian-born child. And my daughter and her daughter, through adoption, although there's no way you could tell, 6 weeks apart in age.
Oh, wow. And
then she had another son. She adopted another son, and I fortunately have not had any more. Whew,
yeah.
Thank God. And, she's one of the most lovely people that I've ever met. And she could have let these things that have happened to her turn her inwards and make her bitter. Instead, she was open enough to take in other children, granted as babies, and treat them 100% as if they were her children, no questions asked, and to spend her time helping other people who have lost children. And, that to me takes an enormous heart, huge compassion, and to forgive the universe and or God, whatever you call it, for taking her sons from her, because I do not know what it's like to lose a child, and pray I never, ever do. I could never begin to imagine, I think, and I don't even want to try.
No. And it's one of those things that, you have a choice in life. When these things occur in life, it's what you do with it, and it's the meaning you give it. And she's obviously turned it around to help others with what she's experienced, which is quite honorable when you think about it. But then you're doing the same. If you look at what you've experienced throughout your life and passing over, you're actually helping others, either through your psychic ability to heal others, and help them, have a longer life.
Yes.
So during your whole process, because it's been quite a bit of a journey, what have been some of the lessons along the way?
Well, I'm trying to think of the lessons along the way. Some of the lessons have been very not pleasant. For instance, I learned a long time ago that not everybody in our field who claimed to be good was truly good. Like they were jealous. There's a lot of jealousy, and I've always been I've always been a very open person. I have shared my knowledge. I, started up a college so that I could teach other people to be medical intuitives. I've been passionate about alternative health, but I don't want to wipe off Western medicine. Why? It's great. It saves so many people, myself included. Why wipe it off?
Mm.
And I have struggled with that, the insecurity that there is within the alternative health profession. The other thing that I have learned is that people who have no truck with the alternative health are going to think that you are absolutely insane.
Yeah.
And that's just something you are going to have to deal with, and that it really pays to maintain your own sense of strength and integrity. Because it's really easy to be pushed over sideways and to come back swinging much too hard.
Yeah. And I mean, being a medical intuitive individual is not something you come across often. And, I think it's one of those things that, yes, some people may find it a little bit woo-woo and others really will embrace it, and I think it's just a matter of, you've helped thousands of people, and I think it's just been through word of mouth. And you are going to get those people that are going to, you can't please everybody, and that's it. I think if you stand in your ground and use your superpower, which is what I call it, you've got a superpower, everything will take care of itself.
Yeah, and that is how I have left it. I don't seek to convince people, or I don't change their mind, and I work very hard when, and it's rare, much rarer than it was, when people like that do confront me. I allow them to have their questions. I'm quite happy to answer their questions and to not be put off by that at all. I think that people like to see and feel and touch and taste and test. And what I do is not something that you can touch and taste and test until I run energy into them. Once I start using the Metatronic energy on them, very few people, there are some, but very few people can't feel that, and very few people walk away unchanged from that.
So when you were saying the Metatron energy, what do you mean by that? What is that exactly?
Well, we have different energy frequencies, which we're all aware of. There's different currencies, electricity and voltage and so forth. Well, it's the same for the human energy field and for universal energy frequencies. And a lot of the healing energies use, justifiably, the lower tone energy, the lower frequencies. So what you might equate with, say, base chakra or sacral chakra or solar chakra energies, because they're quite dense and effective, but they don't have the capability to repair an organ or help a bone knit or hold a baby in place that is threatening to miscarry, that sort of thing. The energy that I was given in heaven, and I'm not the only one on this planet that uses it, there's more than me, so Metatron and heaven have had a field day, I'd imagine, is a much lighter energy. It's like the difference between standing under Niagara Fall or getting under your shower. The energy I use is like getting under the shower.
And is that associated with Archangel Metatron?
Yes.
Is that who you work with?
Well, that has been one. He has been one of my guides. I have other guides who are non-angels, but Metatron has, or I still use guides who are non-angels, but Metatron is the frequency that I use. And he's the bridge between heaven and earth. He's the only angel that had been human and chose, or, had been an angel and chose to come and be a human so that he could experience what it's like to be human.
So, the other thing that we do ask, Carmel, is for those that run businesses or entrepreneurs, and obviously you've got your own medical centre, what would be some of those biggest pain points? Because everyone, sorry?
I work from Shambhala.
Okay.
So it's not mine. I'm a consultant out of Shambhala, self-employed, but I use
So what would be some of those pain points for you? Because every business and every entrepreneur has a pain point. What would be some of yours or one of yours?
I'm not sure what you mean.
So pain points is things that sometimes it could be as simple as, for example, my pain points might be that I don't know how to recruit the right people, or I'm not good at social media, or what would be a pain point in your business? It could be as simple as maybe, your pain point in your business is, what people think about your business, or the impact their business has on you and your family, or that kind of thing.
Well, they have changed over the years. Now the biggest pain point I have is actually my web, is finding somebody who can design a website that actually reflects what I'm trying to say and has all the information on there. Initially, it used to be getting people to accept what I did, and my children paid the price for that a lot. So I had to keep my profession very hidden, but I refuse to do that nowadays. It's not my problem anymore; it's other people's. But I know from observing other people and for the things that I have tried to do, it's getting people through the doors is one of the most trickiest things to do for anybody who works in the alternative industry, because I have found that advertising doesn't really help. It alerts people, but it doesn't really help. It's people hearing about you through programs like this, or through a friend, or through seeing somebody have a successful session that actually helps. And that's something that you cannot pay for. That is something that you have to have done the hard yards. I would definitely recommend that anybody who's choosing to go into alternative health never thinks that they know it all, or know enough, or are in competition with anybody else. That whatever they have to offer is completely individual, so there is no need to do anything other than help.
It's so true. And I always say there's no such thing as competition. There's only collaboration, because we're all authentic human beings, and what you offer, somebody else offers, it's not the same.
No.
Yeah. So, Carmel, we love to ask our woman of inspiration as we wrap up the show to pick one word that best describes her personal brand. So what would be that one word for you?
Inspirational.
Love it. And the other thing we ask our woman of inspiration as we wrap up the show is to share 3 shiny golden nuggets for our listeners. So what would be those 3 shiny golden nuggets that you would like to leave for our listeners today?
3 shiny golden nuggets. Do they have to be prim?
Well, it's kind of advice, or
all right. Well, my 3 shiny golden nuggets is always be polite, have good manners, regardless, because good manners cost nothing. And I know that might sound like poor, maybe people will think that's not good business advice, but that is also the best business advice I can give you. And always dress well for the occasion. You can never be overdressed. And remember to pay attention to the dollars and cents. It doesn't mean chase them, but express gratitude for it.
I love that last one. And that second one, what you were saying, dress, always, I always, for me, I would never leave the house without makeup. That's just who I am.
Yeah.
Because it's like you just never know who you're going to bump into out in the street. So I have that same belief. You just always dress for success, regardless of where you're going.
Yes, absolutely. I always have in all my time in business. I have always worn, most of my clothes, I'll tell you a secret, have come from op shops over the years, or clothes my mother passed down to me that I then altered because we had so many children and, who could afford whatever. But every piece I got was a designer piece or handmade or vintage, and it was always impeccably kept.
I love it. Love it. So, Carmel, for our listeners, where can they find you? What would be the best place?
Shambhala Centre in Port Melbourne, Victoria,
Centre.
Australia. Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
Yep. Or on my Facebook page, or LinkedIn, Twitter, Carmel Bell. But if you go to Facebook, Carmel Bell Medical Intuitive, you will find me there, and you can book in if you wish a session through that as well.
I'm sure our listeners, after they listen to this interview, they're going to be in touch, and because I'm sure it will draw an immense curiosity, as it did for me. So, Carmel, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show and sharing your story. What a story. I'm still sitting here with goosebumps. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Catherine. It has been an absolute pleasure. There have been brilliant questions, and I have felt so comfortable with you. I think you are an absolutely marvellous person.
Oh, you're gorgeous. Thank you so much. Bless you.
Bless you too, Catherine.
That brings us to the end of another episode. I hope you enjoyed the show, as it is my mission to reach out and inspire as many individuals like you. And one of the best ways to help us achieve this goal is by giving us a good review on iTunes. It's easy and it only takes about 10 seconds. If you have any questions or special guests that you would like to hear from, please send us an email to support@catherineplano.com.au and we will get right back to you. You can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter or Facebook @Catherine Plano. That's it for now. Thanks for listening. Until next week, please take care.